Hello and welcome. In the next half an hour, we bring you the important stories on politics, culture, showbiz from across the world. Events that shape our world and narrate the story of our times. Stories of human struggles and achievements. This is World Connect, your window to the world. I'm Shubhendu. Let's set the ball rolling with the focus of the show. Norway keeps reputation intact as the best country to live in for the 12th consecutive year. On the other hand, world faces the challenge of dealing with those displaced in war-torn region. He promised change and he is bringing it. Canada's Justin Trudeau looks on to address the wrongs of the past. The wounds though still fresh, Peshawar tries to move on from the school massacre last year. It's breaking all records, the 7th in the Star Wars series, set to become the highest grosser of all time. Argentina finds reasons to celebrate, tango fever grips the nation, and a moving story of a son who finds his mother nearly after 4 decades. First up, what UN Human Development Report is all about. It has ranked Norway as the best place to live in the world. Burundi, with political instability and one of the poorest populations in the world, appears at the bottom of the list. The report also highlights the big gender divide at workplace.
For those willing to have a happy and prosperous life, Norway can be an ideal destination. That's what United Nations Human Development Report indicates at. The country has earned #1 spot on the UN 2015 Human Development Index, that too for the 12th year in a row. The index measures countries in 3 basic areas: life expectancy, education and income or standard of living. Australia follows Norway to be on second pedestal, followed by Switzerland, Denmark and Netherlands. The countries with the steepest drops are Libya, which slipped 27 places, and Syria, which fell 15 spots. Burundi is at the bottom of the list. The index measures 188 countries and territories. This year's index has a new entry, South Sudan. The report also reveals that there are still 830 million people in the world who were working poor. That means they live on less than $2 a day. On the other hand, 2 billion people had moved safely out of the low human development countries, either because of migration or actual local development in their area. It said that more than 200 million people, including 74 million youth, are unemployed, while 21 million people are currently in forced labor. Highlighting the gender inequality when it comes to being paid for work, the report says women are less likely to be paid for their work than men, with 3 out of every 4 hours of unpaid work carried out by women. It added that when women are paid, they earn globally on average 24% less than men and occupy less than a quarter of senior business positions worldwide. UN said the report is an urgent call to tackle one of the world's greatest development challenges, providing enough decent work and livelihoods for all. The report also called for equitable and decent work for all.
Despite disagreements, the world has reached a deal that can be best termed as the health insurance policy of the planet, as UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon puts it. Let's take a look at how major economic powers fared at the summit.
The Paris climate deal was the culmination of 4 years of negotiations. Every country made compromises, some got a better deal than others, and some did not. The small island nations like Marshall Islands and Maldives push hard for a global commitment to try to limit Earth's warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and recognition that they're going to need help to deal with the damage. They got both. United States. The deal has no new legal binding emissions or financial targets and allows countries to set their own emission targets, which works in favor of the US. China. The deal that reflects different capabilities of rich and poor throughout the text is a win-win for China, the biggest greenhouse gas emitter. India. India made sure the text includes some leeway for developing nations. However, the deal doesn't have a mention of rich countries providing clean technology free of intellectual property rights to poor ones. European Union. The EU successfully introduced a mechanism in the deal designed to ramp up emissions targets over time. Saudi Arabia. Oil-rich Saudi Arabia argued against the 1.5 degrees temperature target and a long-term goal to phase out emissions. It lost both the battles. The biggest loser could be the fossil fuel industry. The deal signals to businesses that governments will enact policies over time to promote a shift towards cleaner energy sources. Here's a look at the intended nationally determined contributions of some of the major emitters: China, US, Europe, India and Russia. The summit forged a landmark agreement and has set the course for a historic transformation of the world's fossil fuel-driven economy within decades in a bid to arrest global warming.
China has objected to US decision of selling 2 warships and arms to Taiwan. Beijing summoned a senior US envoy to register its unhappiness. It warned that China's government and firms will cut commercial ties with businesses selling weapons to the island. The Obama administration formally notified Congress on Wednesday of a $1.83 billion arms sale package for Taiwan, including 2 frigates, anti-tank missiles, amphibious assault vehicles and other equipment, drawing an angry response from China. Taiwan has expressed gratitude to Washington for helping with its defense needs.
We urge the United States to see clearly the severe harm and high sensitivity of selling arms to Taiwan, to honor its commitment to stopping selling arms to Taiwan.
Most importantly, arms sales to Taiwan will enhance the ability of self-defense of the Republic of China and will have positive influence to promote regional peace and stability.
The United Nations Security Council on Thursday unanimously adopted a resolution to cut off funds for the Islamic State. Measures such as asset freeze, travel ban and arms embargo will be taken against the Islamic State, also known as IS and Daesh, that controls large swaths of Syria and Iraq, including oil and gas fields. The resolution also noted that IS is a splinter group of Al-Qaeda and said that terrorism can only be defeated by a sustained and comprehensive approach involving the active participation and collaboration of all states and international and regional organizations. Saudi Arabia this week announced a new Islamic alliance to fight terrorism. The grouping led by Saudi Arabia will share information and train, equip and provide forces if necessary for the fight against Islamic State militants. The move to form 34-nation Islamic military coalition to combat terrorism was welcomed by the United States. The new coalition would have a joint operations center based in Riyadh to coordinate and support military operations. The list did not include Shiite Muslim Iran, the arch rival of Sunni Saudi Arabia. Other notable omissions are Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Algeria, Oman and Eritrea. In a setback for women's rights in Japan, the top court has upheld the law that enforces same surname for spouses, which in most cases is the husband's surname. Activists expressed disappointment, though public opinion remains split.
Japan's Supreme Court has upheld a law requiring spouses to use the same surname, saying the law does not violate the constitution. The ruling deals a major blow to Japanese women seeking to keep their maiden names after marriage. Kyoko Tsukamoto, an 80-year-old plaintiff, expressed her disappointment after the ruling. My identity was Tsukamoto Koyoko. What happens to a person who loses that identity? I cannot live as Tsukamoto Koyoko. And now I won't be able to die as Tsukamoto Koyoko. Women in Japan were traditionally able to retain their maiden names after marriage until 1898, when a law was enacted as part of a feudal family system. While the law does not stipulate which name married couples should adopt, in practice, 96% of women in Japan take their husbands' names after marriage, a reflection of the country's male-dominated society. The lawsuit was first filed by 5 plaintiffs in 2011 and has been rejected by the lower courts twice. Public opinion in Japan is split on the issue.
It's not like the old days where there's a fixation on which family you're married into. It's the age of the individual, so I want the things to go in that direction.
From a guy's perspective, I want the surnames to be the same as otherwise. I won't feel like I'm actually married to that person.
The decision means the only option for couples who wish to have separate surnames is that they avoid registering their marriages. People in common law marriages, however, encounter complications in inheritance and parental rights. In a separate case, the court ruled that prohibiting women from remarrying for 6 months after a divorce is unconstitutional. The law was originally intended to help determine the paternity of a child born shortly after divorce. Japan is one of only a few industrialized countries in the world where it is illegal for married couples to have different surnames.
It was one of the worst attacks on humanity. Over 140 people, mostly school children, were killed in the attack on Army School in Peshawar on 16 December 2014. Post-Peshawar, Pakistan took a series of measures to tackle terrorism. The country is appeared to have adopted a tough stance to send a strong message to those threatening its people. As Pakistanis remembered the victims of Peshawar massacre, they vowed to defeat terror. Pakistan Army also released a touching song on the anniversary.
मेरे भी हाथ पे 2 बुलेट लगी है और 4 सर्जरीज हुई है और अभी फर्दर ट्रीटमेंट की ज़रूरत है।
मेरे दोनों हाथ पे रिस्ट ड्रॉप थी और मैं पेपर भी नहीं दे सकता था और उस वक्त मैं हॉस्पिटल में था।
बच्चा जब कंप्लेन करता है वो सो नहीं सकता, वो अपनी बॉडी को प्रॉपर मूव नहीं कर सकता। बाज़ बच्चे ऐसे हैं कि जिनके बदन के अंदर अभी तक बुलेट मौजूद हैं।
This was the day that really made me to cry because the stories of all the mothers and the children were tragic. And you just imagine for a second that what was the crime of these children.
दुश्मन के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, मुझे दुश्मन के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, मुझे माँ उससे बदला लेने जाना है, मुझे दुश्मन के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, मुझे दुश्मन के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है।
Spotlight returns to decades-long violence and abuse of Canada's Aboriginal population, particularly women and children. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced long-awaited inquiry into murder and disappearance of hundreds of Indigenous women and girls. He has also pledged to renew the relationship between Canada and its Aboriginals.
The Government of Canada is committed to walking that path with Indigenous peoples in partnership and in friendship. In fact, that work has already begun. A national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is now underway.
As Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced an inquiry into the violence against Aboriginal women over past 3 decades, he looks on to address the wrongs of the past and script a better future. Around 1,200 Indigenous women were reportedly killed or disappeared between 1980 and 2012. Most of the 1.4 million Indigenous population of the country live in extreme vulnerability and poverty with minimum infrastructure and facilities. Justin Trudeau, who triumphed to power in October and gained massive support from Indigenous voters, made big promises to change their lives. Accepting the report of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which looked into abuses of Indigenous children in residential schools, Prime Minister Trudeau vowed to work for full reconciliation with Canadian Aboriginals.
No relationship is more important to me and to Canada than the one with First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples.
Trudeau even said he would speak directly with Pope Francis that the Vatican apologize for the role of the Roman Catholic Church in the schools. He also announced to implement all 94 recommendations of the Commission. The idea behind Indian residential schools during 1800 to 1996 was to assimilate indigenous children into the Euro-Canadian culture. About 150,000 children were forcibly taken from their families and communities and put in such schools, while their families were forced to transfer rights of guardianship to the government. The children were subjected to physical, emotional, spiritual and sexual torture. This abuse, often termed as cultural genocide, believed to have claimed lives of at least 3,200 children. As the indigenous people grapple with the tragic legacy of residential schools and the horrific toll on their women, Trudeau's government's initiatives have shown them a new ray of hope.
The United Nations has said that number of forcibly displaced people worldwide will far surpass a record 60 million this year. UNHCR, the refugee agency of the world body, said that 1 in every 122 humans is today someone who has been forced to flee from their homes. The figure includes 20.2 million refugees, the highest total since 1992. The numbers were mainly driven by the Syrian war, conflict in Ukraine, and other protracted conflicts. Violence in Afghanistan, Somalia and South Sudan also sparked large refugee movements, as well as fighting in Burundi, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Iraq. Mother Teresa, the Nobel laureate who spent her life serving the poor and sick, will be made a saint of Roman Catholic Church. Pope Francis recognized a second medical miracle of the late nun to clear the decks for her elevation. The miracle responsible for Mother Teresa's canonization concerned the inexplicable cure of a Brazilian man suffering from a viral brain infection that resulted in multiple abscesses. Mother Teresa is expected to be canonized in early September. Teresa founded the Missionaries of Charity and spent 45 years serving the poor, the sick and the dying. She died at the age of 87 in the year 1997. Rwandans have voted overwhelmingly to allow President Paul Kagame to extend his term in office. This is what the initial reports suggest. Some 98% of voters support changing the constitution to allow Kagame to run again in 2017 after second term ends. Kagame could remain in power until 2034 if the changes are passed. The golden mask of Tutankhamun is back on public display at Egyptian Museum in Cairo after a much-needed makeover. The 3,300-year-old mask has returned to the museum after being painstakingly restored following a botched attempt to glue its beard back on. The beard was accidentally knocked during work at the museum in August 2014. And before we head to the world of Star Wars, a quick look at some more stories making headlines. The Millennium Falcon is back. The Death Star has been replaced. Wondering what I'm talking about? Well, you wouldn't if you are one of the millions of fans of Star Wars franchise. Yes, Star Wars The Force Awakens is here, breaking all box office records in the very first week.
Star Wars fever swept millions of fans across the globe as the 7th episode of the popular sci-fi saga hit cinemas. The Force Awakens was given thumbs up by its lovers as they flocked to theatres. Hollywood rolled out the red carpet for the premiere. This is the first Star Wars film in the epic space saga in 10 years. The star-studded screening of the most anticipated film of the year on Monday was followed by a global release on Wednesday. It officially hit US cinemas on Friday. Reviews were initially embargoed until Wednesday, but when they finally got published, showered tremendous praise.
It's wonderful. It's one of those. I mean, I think JJ's made a masterpiece. I think he's really made something incredibly special on a massive scale with so much anticipation.
Sporting popular Star Wars costumes, fans who had been waiting desperately burst into joy as they saw the first glimpse of the movie. For them, it was all they wanted.
Look and feel of the film is like the old trilogy. It just felt like home. It felt warm and fuzzy.
Everything I've dreamed of. It is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I want to just tell you everything, but I can't because I just can't do that. But it was awesome.
Star Wars has attracted generations of loyal fans since the first film was released in 1977. It turned Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill into overnight stars. The film is expected to top the box office with an estimated $225 million earning over the weekend.
They say it takes two to tango. The Argentines celebrated the dance form in a mass street performance in Buenos Aires. A sensual dance form, tango has all elements of romance in its synchronized movements.
Argentina, the country that gave tango to the world, celebrated the dance form with a mass street performance in Buenos Aires. Argentines took part in the Great National Milonga, an annual event that comes close to the National Tango Day on 11 December, a day that marks the birth of tango legend Carlos Gardel. Argentine tango music is much more varied than ballroom tango music, and dancing consists of a variety of styles that developed in different regions and eras. Unlike a ballroom tango, which has a fixed style, Argentina tango evolves each day. The origin of tango is in fact disputed between both Argentina and Uruguay, as is the origins of Gardel. Though many believe the sensuous paired dance originated in the 1880s in the slums of Buenos Aires. Wherever the origin be, tango today is a global phenomenon.
Nearly 500, yes, that's the number of children separated from their mothers during the 7-year-long dirty war in Argentina. The 119th child has been found, all because of Abdulas de Plaza de Mayo, a group that is spreading hope where there was none.
39 years, a wait that long for a son to know who his biological mother is. Mario Bravo's story is one of the many Argentina has witnessed during the military rule. But unlike others, Mario has been lucky, for not many separated at birth by the dirty war have had the same fate.
Ahora hay que ser positivo, ahora hay que pensar para adelante.
I was lucky to have found my mother still alive, and that is a miracle. This is a miracle, and I have to enjoy this.
His mother, Sarah, about whom not much details have been revealed, was taken political prisoner in 1975. She gave birth to Mario in 1976. Till date, she wasn't even aware if it was a boy or a girl. All she heard was a child's cry. Mario is the 119th missing child identified by Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, a group that works to reunite families separated during Argentina's 7-year dictatorship. Estela Di Carlotto, the president of the organization, has herself lived the tragedy. Her daughter Laura was picked up by the military when she was just 3 months pregnant. Our son was born in June 1978 and the child was with the mother for just 5 hours before being given away. 2 months later, dragged out of the camp, she was killed in the most brutal manner. Estela met her grandchild, Ignacio Montoyo Carlotto, only last year. Nearly 30,000 Argentines were murdered and 500 children abducted during the military rule from 1976 to 1983. There are still many to be found, and the organization continues to work and reunite them with families.
Estas cosas no pasan por milagro.
As Estela Di Carlotto puts it, these things do not happen by miracle, nor by loneliness or by magic. They happen because of the people of Argentina who, in peace, without violence, are creating paths that astonish the entire world.
This brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send us your feedback. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. But as we leave, let's take you around the world as Christmas fervor picks up. World's largest floating Christmas tree turns on its lights in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro, an underwater performance in South Korea, and Russian Father Frost riding through central Moscow. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.